Well, we're only halfway through Anthony Albanese's first term in office, and already there are concerns he could be a one-term wonder. In Queensland, a key state where federal Labor holds just 5 of 30 seats, the ALP's primary vote is tanking at just 27%, according to the most recent Newspoll. Now Labor MP Shayne Neumann is warning colleagues they will be a minority government unless they pick up more seats in Queensland at the next election. But how do you win more seats in a mining state while campaigning for net zero? And how does Anthony Albanese attract support in a conservative state like Queensland when he seems to spend most of his time playing to his own inner Sydney seat of Marrickville? Joining me to discuss this is Queensland National Party Senator Matt Canavan. Matt, is it fair to say that Albanese's special brand of inner city elitism is not supported by the majority of Queenslanders?
Well, that certainly seems to be indicated by those polls, James, and it's also indicated to me when I get around the state, especially up here in central Queensland. I mean, this state is built on the back of those who produce things. We're a proud, wealth-producing state. We're not a mendicant state. We don't rely on welfare from others. We produce things. We produce things of high value that make a lot of money for our country, create a lot of jobs, and of course end up sending a lot of tax revenues both down to Brisbane and Canberra to fund the inner city elitism that you just mentioned. So people are pretty proud of the industries that do that they work in, that provides their livelihoods. The farming, the mining industries are right up the top of there. And pretty much everything the Albanese government is doing, when you think about those industries, is trying to shut them down or make their lives harder. One of the major pieces of legislation we just passed before we went to Christmas was this new Murray-Darling plan, which is all about taking more water off farmers, reducing agricultural production, making it harder for country towns to sustain themselves and have a brighter future. And of course, the Labor Party basically wants to shut down the coal industry. They have a safeguard mechanism, which is year after year putting more and more cost on the coal mining industry. They're telling us they're going to bring in hydrogen jobs. It's all a lot of hot air, and people know it. They know they've got a very good detector up here in North Queensland where they're being lied to. And they're being lied to time and time again by this government, who cannot bring themselves to defend the jobs and livelihoods of people in Queensland north of the Tweed.
Now, to be fair, Scott Morrison committed the LNP to, or the coalition to net zero. So what's going to be different with the Liberals?
Well, look, I would say, so when you look at the polls, the primary vote of both major parties is relatively low. And I think a lot of that is because we've failed to, our own side, and I've been critical of this, have failed to outline a coherent agenda here. I think this issue, whether it's you want to describe it as net zero, what to do about climate change, there are choices to be made. It's a time for choosing. And I'm very firmly of the belief that a strong centre-right Conservative Party should choose our livelihoods, our nation's prosperity, over genuflecting to these international gods who want us to handicap our own economy, our own industry, for no environmental benefit. The only benefit will be a free kick to those countries like China and India and many others in Asia, Africa, who do nothing to reduce climate change, or reduce carbon emissions, I should say, in their own economies. So all we'll do is give a leg up to our competitors, send our jobs offshore. I think we should be proudly defending our own industries, defending our nation's best interests, and our best interests, in my view, are making sure we continue to have productive industries that provide great services, including cheaper energy. We should be a party that wants to develop all our energy sources, whereas at the moment we're picking and choosing, whether it's nuclear on our side or renewables, of course, batteries, hydrogen on the other side. We should be doing all things. We should be building coal-fired power stations, gas-fired power stations, because we should have a country of energy abundance in Australia. And if we have energy abundance, your power bills will be a lot lower.
Tell me how it's going to work in Queensland next year. We've got a state election and most people are expecting the state Labor Party are going to be wiped out, and most people are indeed hoping for that. But then that changes the balance in Queensland, doesn't it, where we've had very strong Labor state government for many years. And perhaps that's why federally Labor haven't done so well, because people like, don't they, to have maybe one party at federal and a different party at a state level. Does that change the equation?
Well, look, I'm going to take Yogi Berra's get out of jail card here and say, look, predictions are very difficult, especially when they're about the future. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think you can say it'll be a given that the Labor government here will be voted out. I think that if we on my side of politics decide that it's a given, that's a recipe for us to lose. Because normally when you go out in a football field thinking you can't lose, well, you normally do. You end up losing. We can definitely lose this. We've got a lot of work to do. The polls are still pretty close, as they always will be. Elections are always relatively close. There's a lot of seats for the LNP to win up here north of Tweed, so it will be a big Herculean task. Look, I definitely think the government's on the nose. That's why they got rid of their own leader. Yeah. Obviously, she was terminally unpopular, Anastasia Palaszczuk. This is a last-ditch Hail Mary attempt here to pull off an unlikely victory for the Labor Party. But look, there's a long way to go here, so who knows how that will play out. Ultimately, though, I think whatever the result of the Queensland election is, I think people are pretty savvy, and they'll judge this government, they'll judge the Albanese government on their record. And I think Anthony Albanese was thinking he'd skate through the next election, continuing to contest and be against Scott Morrison. He'd effectively fight another election against Scott Morrison. Well, I think Peter Dutton's a very formidable opponent, and the next election will be a referendum on this government and on his promises, like his promise to cut power bills by $275. If he hasn't delivered that, well, it's going to be very, very hard work for the Labor Party to be re-elected.
Well, speaking of Peter Dutton, he said the government's decision not to send a warship to the Red Sea to help stop Iran-backed rebels from attacking cargo ships is going to hurt Australians at the petrol bowser. Can you just talk me through that?
Well, look, obviously, if we have disruptions to trade routes and higher costs of freight, those goods that will cost more to get here will go up in price. And we unfortunately are in a situation now where we import well over almost all of our refined oil needs. We only have 2 oil refineries left, and in fact we import more than half of our raw petroleum needs in net terms. So this will hurt us. It will hurt our economy by not having more efficient trade routes available. Now, I think we should have made a contribution. Well, apparently our contribution has been 6 military personnel, 6 military personnel sent to this request. I mean, I think this must be the first time in history that an expeditionary force has been able to fit into business class on a plane to go over to help a situation. It just beggars belief why you'd even bother with 6 people. I don't think the Yanks are desperately waiting on that. And so, look, it's very unfortunate we haven't made a contribution, a more sizeable contribution, the one that was requested us in a ship. We obviously have a very big interest as a nation in maintaining peaceful, free flow of goods and freight right across the world. And this is pretty much one of the most important bottlenecks in the world, in the Red Sea, in the Suez Canal. We should be doing what we can to help.
Matt, just before we go, we've got a tiny bit of time left. You're in Queensland. Obviously, we've seen disasters in the north, now in the southeast. Just tell me your impressions of what's happened and how the recovery is being handled.
Well, look, it's been devastating, absolutely devastating. You're right, we saw them in Cairns, those terrible floods, and I've just been in southeast Queensland visiting family, and they've been affected with power out. Unfortunately, no injuries or anything like that, but there's still people with power out in some of the hottest conditions in the year. So it's very, very tough for people. And of course, we've had 10 people lose their lives. It's very, very sad. So hope everyone just keeps safe and gets through these dangerous times.
Absolutely. Matt Canavan, thank you so much for your time.